So one thing I've been annoyed about a lot recently is how the way modern game developers handle support for their games and updates, etc., just in general, how they actively manage their games. I've noticed this huge trend in listening too much to the community. And I think this goes beyond just game development. I think this goes for content creation on YouTube and other platforms as well, that even if you're not a game developer, you shouldn't listen to your community too much, because it can and does ruin quite literally everything if you do. A good example of what I mean is, look, I know you're Valve fans, you're probably not going to want to hear this. I'm probably shattering everyone's views of myself by bringing this up, but Overwatch. I admit it, I played Overwatch a lot when it came out because it was very fun. Sue me. It was a good game. Yeah, it was definitely influenced by TF2 in a lot of very obvious ways, but I think it was definitely unique enough to be given respect in its own right. But that's a subject for another video. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm just going to talk about why the expectation for constant updates and support for games is bad, in my opinion. And I don't even think it's an opinion, I think it's just straight up fact because of how many times it has actually ruined games in their entirety. As an example, Overwatch. Maybe not the best example to start with, but I'm going to do it anyways because I'm in a hurry right now and I don't have time to structure my thoughts properly. But Overwatch, when it first came out, was very fun. I really liked it. A lot of people said that it was too easy, the time to kill was too low, and that the abilities and the certain character abilities and stuff were way too overpowered and made things way too easy to get kills with, and etc. It was unbalanced, whatever. But I honestly disagreed with all of those claims. And I honestly think that's why people liked Overwatch so much in the beginning, was because it was a very relaxing game, I guess, in the sense that it was really easy. And that was like the appeal, was that it was like a team-based a game like Team Fortress was, but it was easy. So it was easy to just sit there and kind of chill out, zone out while you played. Because no matter who you chose, no matter what character you chose, they were very powerful and very easy to use and very fun to use because all their abilities were very effective. And I think that in the sense that since all the characters were overpowered, none of them were overpowered because in other words, if everyone's a superhero, no one's a superhero, right? If everyone in the whole world had superpowers, it wouldn't be a special thing. So since all the characters were overpowered, no one was overpowered because you're all on an equal playing field, because every character has ridiculously overpowered abilities, and that's what was fun about it. I enjoyed it a lot. I liked that about it. And I think that's why a lot of other people did too. That's probably why it was so successful in the beginning. It was very appealing, it was very easy to get into. For anyone, whether they were new to that kind of game or whether they were people who played team-based, class-based kind of games like that in the past. They focused too much on what the community was saying, and the reason why you don't listen to the community too much is because the community is always divided no matter what. No matter what you do to your game or your content or whatever it is you do, there's going to be people who like it and people who don't like it. And if you're trying to constantly please the people who don't like it, you're going to be changing everything about your content or your game for the rest of eternity, because no matter what you do, someone somewhere is not going to like it, and you can't cater to everyone, or otherwise everything's going to be out of whack. And I think that's what happened to Overwatch, because they just kept updating the game and changing things over and over and over and over and over and over. And every time somebody had a complaint about like, oh, this character's overpowered, oh, this ability is overpowered, oh, this needs to be nerfed, oh, that needs to be nerfed, this needs to be buffed, they would listen too much, way too much to the community, And so there was constant changes to characters, so much so that it was disorienting. I couldn't really keep up with all the changes, and I couldn't really play anymore because I had to like relearn how to play every character like every other week. And it eventually got to the point where they tried so hard to balance everything that it just stopped being fun, because then everything got nerfed, all the characters got nerfed, all the abilities got nerfed, to the point where you just like, everyone was weak. And I mean, I guess that's more fair, quote unquote, but definitely not as fun. I mean, like, I don't mind tuning a game to be extremely fair and balanced in every possible way for competitive players, as long as it's separate from casual. Because like, what's the point of having a separate competitive mode and a separate casual mode if whatever changes you make to the game to make it more competitive affect both parts of the game? Like, if I'm playing casual, it's because I want to play casually. I'm not in it to win. I'm not in it to, like, yeah, if you want to make the game super, 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 super balanced for competitive players, just apply those changes in the competitive mode so that people who are competitive can go play the super, super, super balanced, constantly ever-changing version of the game in competitive mode, and then just leave casual the way it is. I think people have lost the idea of what the word casual means. Okay? If I'm playing casual mode, it's because I'm trying to have fun and relax. I'm not there for competition. I'm there for fun. And sometimes unbalanced things can be fun if you do it right. And I think they did it right in the beginning. Constant updates just ruin the game and kind of decentivize playing when everything in the game is ever changing. You constantly have to relearn how things work, and that's not fun, especially for casual players. It might be fun for some people that are more competitive, but not for people who are just there to have fun. But it's the same with YouTube. You can't listen to everyone, because then your content's gonna be frickin' all over the place. It's the same with pretty much anything you do. I've seen the same thing happen in the movie industry, where they try too hard to listen to everyone, all the fans. You can't cater to everyone, and if you do, it's disaster every time, because it's unrealistic to think that you can please everyone, or at least try to implement ideas from every part of the specific community that you're dealing with. And I don't know why that has become so common in the modern day. There's a lot of games that I played a lot that I either don't play at all or play in a much reduced amount because updates ruined it. And with the way modern games work, you can't like play older versions because there's no modding support for 90% of games that come out nowadays. You can't just roll back updates. They're permanent. I liked TF2 a lot before the Meet Your Match update. I liked TF2 a lot before they basically did the same thing as Overwatch did and tried to recalculate the way the entire game works specifically for the competitive community. It stopped being as fun when they tried to nerf everything that the community considered overpowered. And I'm not saying that games shouldn't have updates or support over the years from the developer. I'm all for content updates and stuff. Content updates are fine. Add new maps, new characters, or what have you, but don't do anything stupid. I mean, yeah, if something really is overpowered, nerf it. If something really is underpowered, buff it, etc., etc. But be reasonable about it, and don't cater to every single whim of the community like companies are doing nowadays, because it's just chaos. I'm finding myself more and more attracted to playing games that have no active support, specifically just because they don't change, and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I can just have fun. I stopped playing Destiny after like 6 years of playing it nonstop, at least like once every day since 2015, because they keep changing everything. And it's not fun when a game that you're used to is constantly changing and having things added and removed every other month. It's very disorienting, especially if you have a life and you're doing other stuff and you come back to your game and it's a different game than last you played. I don't know. I'm very frustrated by all of this, because there's been so many games that have just been straight up ruined by constant support and updates and changes and quote unquote fixes. And I'm getting to the point where I spend most of my time playing single player games now, because they're the only games that remain untouched, that don't have major details about the game just completely torn away from one week to the next. It feels nice to have stability. It feels nice to have familiarity. When you play a game a lot, like if you play TF2 constantly, or you play Overwatch constantly, or you play Destiny constantly, it starts to feel like home. You figure out where everything is, how everything works. You get in a rhythm. You form muscle memory for certain things. Everything starts feeling natural. And I think that's something that draws a fan base to stick around for a while. You get so familiar with it that it starts to feel like home. It's something you can go back to at any time and know exactly what you're doing and how to do it, and it's relaxing, it's comforting. But if you're constantly changing, you can't have that. You can't just go drop into a game of Overwatch after having not played it for a few months and get back into the rhythm of exactly how you knew to play a few months prior. You can't do the same with pretty much any game now. And I don't like that. It turns me off. It turns me away from games that I knew and loved for a very long time. And honestly, I despise the modern approach to video game monetization. I hate the season pass system with a passion so much. It is disgusting. Don't understand it. I hate it, and it makes me not want to play the games that system is integrated into. And I hate time-limited content in general, especially, like, okay, time-limited cosmetic items aren't that big of a deal, especially if they're seasonal, as long as they come back every season and aren't just straight up never available again. But, like, time-limited story missions. This is something that Destiny does. Time-limited content that is big chunks of the actual game. That entire concept should not exist. I should not have to worry about not being able to experience a huge part of the video game's story if I can't play for a month. And honestly, I stopped paying attention to the storyline of Destiny for that specific reason, because with their season pass system, or whatever the frick they call it, they'll release like these huge, basically miniature expansion packs to the game for free that add all these story missions, all these new weapons and exotic quests and like crazy stuff that are only in the game until the season's over. So the entire story of the game now is season based. So if I don't play for a season, I miss a huge chunk of the story that I can no longer experience at all, because it's just removed from the game when the season's over. I don't like that, especially because there are times when I stop playing games for a little while because I'll find a different game that I want to play, or I'll go on vacation in real life, or I'll get sick or something. I don't want to have to worry about, like, oh, if I gotta play Destiny today, I gotta play it for at least 12 hours every day. I don't want to miss anything. And it's like, yeah, sure, I guess I could just look it up, go watch someone else play through it after the season's over, but The whole point of a video game is to be able to experience it for yourself. That's why it's a video game, not a movie. No matter what game you're playing, removing content from the game should never be a thing. That should be priority number 1 on any game, is never remove content from the game. Do not... I mean, imagine if it was the same way with movies. Like, if movies had support from the developer. I mean, it's basically like what George Lucas did with the original Star Wars trilogy. That's an actual good example, because he's one of the only people that had constant support for movies, where they just keep changing every few years, and then, like, parts are actively removed or changed, and then so much so that they're basically permanent and you can't really go back to the old versions, or at least it's very difficult to go back to the old versions. It's just counterproductive and stupid, and honestly, it's unimaginable. I mean, most people don't really think about it, I guess, or most people just don't know how things used to be before the modern video game developer mindset happened. But, I mean, back in the day, when games would come out, they would come out and then stay the same. Like, a game would come out and then its content that it came out with would be in that game for the rest of time, because that's how things work. Like, when Quake 2 came out, they didn't, like, remove any missions a few years later. If you made a game, you could make expansion packs for it or DLC for it to add more content to the game, but you wouldn't take things out. The whole point of game development is to add on to what's there, not take away from it. I mean, imagine that in any other art form. Like, oh yeah, this is a statue of David. We come back and, like, take parts out of it, put new parts on it every few months, just to keep things fresh. It's just constantly ever changing, and the original version will never actually exist because it's just being butchered every few months.